No, not Ukraine and not Israel. I'm going to take you to the forgotten world conflict that nobody is talking about and is the worst human displacement in the world right now. Then after, I'm going to tell you why there are changes coming to all of your monthly subscriptions, but in a good way, and my thoughts on what's causing 7-Elevens to shut down all across the country. And then finally, on the Bullock, we wrap up with one of Picasso's paintings being unearthed in a basement and worth up to $6 million. All here on the Bullock today, so let's do it. The mainstream news is so corrupt.
This is unbelievable.
This is wild.
No one is talking about this.
The shootings are just out of control right now.
If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed.
So with the ever-going conflicts in Ukraine and in the Middle East with Israel and its neighbors, there is a forgotten conflict that's been going on for almost 2 years now. The civil war in Sudan, which you can say for certain the conflict has been brewing long before that. So far, 20,000 people have been killed since the civil war became official back on April 15th of last year, with 8.2 million more people being displaced since then, which as of right now is considered the worst human displacement crisis in the entire world. A quick summary leading up to this conflict to help explain things a little bit here. So, since gaining its independence from British in 1956, the country has had 19 military coup attempts, the most by any nation in Africa and probably in the entire world, and has mostly been ruled by its own military. So lots of domestic conflict here. It's had 2 full-scale civil wars, the first spanning from 1955 until 1972, and then the second civil war spanning from 1983 to 2005. That all occurred between its government body and its southern region, hence the development of South Sudan gaining its independence from Sudan back in 2011, which also resulted in 1.5 million people being killed. To put that in perspective, that's more than the total amount of American soldiers that have been killed in all of our wars combined, which is about 1.4 million. It's very hard to put all of this in a quick summary like this, but moving forward to today now, the civil war is between 2 rival forces, the military government of Sudan, aka the SAF, and the paramilitary group called the Rapid Support Forces, aka the RSF. With the absolute stalemate right now in the civil war, which is making it look similar to the war in Ukraine, with neither side, after over a year of fighting, gaining any more significant control than it had prior to its original beginning, this conflict has become the worst human displacement in the world, and that just seems to be waning throughout the world media. And I say that as an understatement, as the Civil War has never even grasped the mainstream media outside of African-based news organizations. When's the last time you heard of CNN, MSNBC, ABC News, CBS News, Fox News, BBC talking about the war in Sudan? It's always Ukraine, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, Gaza. Now, how could that be when it's the worst human displacement in the world right now, and there's so many Americans and Europeans who tend to be out there and being so outspoken on how much they care about what is happening in other parts of the countries? The next time someone tries to lecture you on the atrocities taking place over in places that rhyme with Gaza or Ukraine, ask them if they can name any other conflicts in the world that carry the same humanitarian weight, but just isn't smashed into their face on social media. They probably won't even be able to, and Sudan is a perfect example of showing people's sheer ignorance of current world atrocities, unless it's explained to them, for them, and they're told how they should feel on it. The Gaza and Ukraine obsessors fail to ever mention how much more brutal the Sudanese civil war is, as it involves military leaders using food, water, and shelter as a means of control over the already impoverished citizens of a very poor nation. Over half the country is experiencing food insecurity, and towns and villages look like the underpass of a bridge in Los Angeles with makeshift tents and sheets. By the end of the year, the death toll from the starvation could possibly outpace the death toll from the actual war itself. So just remember that just because a tree falls in the forest with nobody around doesn't mean it doesn't make a sound. Now, time for thumbs up and thumbs down, and a huge thumbs up here to the Federal Trade Commission.
Thumbs up, average Joes can play.
The Federal Trade Commission aims to adopt a click-to-cancel rule, which aims to make it easier for people to end subscriptions. Businesses and retailers will also have to get consent from customers prior to automatically renewing their online subscriptions or converting free trials into paid memberships. The new rule is due to come into effect in about 6 months. Now, we've all been there. You sign up for something that says free, yet they ask for a credit card. And depending on our need for that service, we knew it was a scam from the beginning, but in the back of our heads, we thought, well, we'll just cancel ahead of time. Then once you try to find the cancel option during the trial, you wind up calling a customer service line with a 45-minute wait and end up pushing that task to the next day, which ends up turning into a month, and poof, your free trial has evolved into a $30 monthly subscription. The FTC has taken action against Adobe and Amazon recently for these deceptive tricks, pushing people into automatically enrolling in a service or enrolling in a supplemental add-on service that they never wanted to have in the first place. The company Adobe has actually tried this on myself. I use their software system, which is about $54 a month for all their programs, Illustrator, Photoshop, Premiere Pro. And about a year ago, I realized I had 2 accounts paying for the same exact software systems, which had been charging me over $100 a month for. And then when I called, they tried charging me a cancellation fee when trying to terminate the duplicate account that they had created in the first place. And if anyone knows me, these little cowardly, greedy practices absolutely boil the blood here. So thumbs up to the Federal Trade Commission there. Now a huge thumbs down to 7-Eleven here. Thumbs down to 7-Eleven, shutting down nearly 450 underperforming stores across North America. In a recent earnings report, the company cited a dip in sales, a decrease in traffic, and inflation as the root causes. The convenience store chain has 13,000 stores across the US and Canada, which means the closings represent just about 3% of its total portfolio, which is still a lot. Now, everyone loves a good 7-Eleven for its quickness, but maybe if its stores in American cities didn't seem like it also housed the homeless, or that they would actually take the hot dogs and the pizza bites off of that like hot roller they have when you walk in, that it looks like they've been cooking on it for the last 7 straight hours, more people might go to it. Now, I'm a supporter of 7-Elevens, but a little cleaner, guys. And change the dogs every probably half hour on there, man. Jesus. Now, sometimes we don't realize how quickly time has passed, which is why I bring you to this day in history.
Which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan.
The president has been shot.
We go back to 1977 on this day and to the Battle of Saratoga, marking the climax of the Saratoga campaign, giving a decisive victory to the Americans over the British in the American Revolutionary War. British General John Burgoyne led an invasion army of about 8,000 men southward from Canada in the Champlain Valley, hoping to meet a similar British force marching northward from New York City and another British force marching eastward from Lake Ontario. The goal was to take Albany, New York. The southern and western forces never arrived, though, and Burgoyne was surrounded by American forces in upstate New York, 15 miles short of his goal. He fought 2 battles, which took place 18 days apart on the same ground 9 miles south of Saratoga, New York. He gained the victory in the very first battle despite being outnumbered, but lost the second battle after the Americans returned with an even larger force. Burgoyne found himself trapped by the much larger American forces with no relief, so he retreated to Saratoga, which is now Schuylerville, and surrendered his entire army there on this day 247 years ago. His surrender, says historian Edmund Morgan, was a great turning point of the war because it won for Americans the foreign assistance, which was the last element they needed for victory. Now, a lot of these times covering the news can get nasty, talking about death, war, a whole bunch of bad stuff. So each news show, I will ensure that I do cover some good news here, as it still does exist in this very hyper-polarized world we do live in. There are some good, very good things to harp on. So good news here we go. A painting that was found in a basement signed with the name Picasso, but that was dismissed, was thrust into a cheap frame, hung in the family house, and then in a restaurant, and now has finally been recognized as an authentic piece by the famous Spanish artist. The value is already estimated to be $6 million, but if recognized by the Pablo Picasso Foundation in Paris, it could be worth twice or 3 times that much. The painting is believed to be an asymmetrical image of Dora Maar, who was Picasso's lover at the time when he spent a period on the Italian island of Capri, where in the 1950s, Luigi Lorusso, a local pawnbroker who used to comb dumps in abandoned houses for treasure, found it in the basement of an empty villa. After discussion with his wife, he began to doubt its authenticity. Fast forward decades later, and Luigi's son, Andrea, learned in college that Picasso was indeed in Capri at the time the painting was made, which, after going through the proper channels of authentication, which is quite extensive, the painting was finally authenticated by a graphologist in Milan, authenticating the Picasso's signature in the lower corner, saying it was indeed 100% real. The last step of officiality for the painting is the approval by the Picasso Foundation in Paris, and once authenticated, the painting would be worth north of $6 million to start. So awesome stuff there, and remember that there is always some good news out there. You just gotta find it. Now, your daily news podcast, The Bullock, is out Tuesday through Thursday at 5 p.m., and I will be back here next Tuesday with another Bullock for Your World news stories. So have a good weekend, everybody, and I will see you then.
News and factual material are deeply researched, confirming the validity of multiple sources by the broader media landscape across the global sector and the digital world. All statements are a combination of primary and secondary research components geared towards providing the only news show in video and podcast form that provides a clear understanding of important world issues that are being left out by the completely biased and politically driven global media machine. Thank you for listening.